Somehow, Tilly Norwood returned. And amazingly, it's even more pathetic than Rise of Skywalker. Hello there, folks. I had a whole other video planned, but then this happened, and yeah, I need to talk about it. If you've been around my channel over the last year, you might remember me talking about Tilly Norwood, the supposed AI actress. Now, there was a whole big splash and a lot of concern, and I'm not saying people weren't right to voice their concern about her. The very concept of an AI actress is horrifying to, and not just actors, anyone who cares about the human involvement in art as a medium. I did an entire video explaining why it was a terrible idea, even aside from the philosophical damage or the environmental damage or anything else, but just core logistics. It was a bad idea that was never going to work. And I pointed out in that video that you can tell they actually are not in as good a position as they want, because the whole thing came out the gates just going, yeah, we're going to be the next big thing. We're going to sign with agents, and we've got all these production houses interested in us, and yeah, it's going to be huge. And nothing since then, which I knew was going to happen, because if they were actually lining up deals for their actress, they wouldn't have had to be telling the press that she's going to be so huge. They would have just been closing those deals, and then she would have been a thing. It does irritate me, for the record, how many news outlets just parroted their effusive praise of their own product with no pushback. Freaking entertainment news, and tech news specifically, but also entertainment news, has got to get a lot better at pushing back when people are being interviewed and they're actively trying to sell something. Push back on that, because otherwise you're basically writing them a free advertorial. Do better. Anyways, I noted that just the fact that Eline Vandervelden, apologies for my pronunciation of that. I kind of got chewed out on it on the last video. I could not find a pronunciation guide for this woman's name, but she is the CEO of Particle 6, the company that is creating this thing, and she was the one who was interviewed in all the articles. So her name's going to come up. I'm trying my best. If I'm pronouncing it really badly, then I'm sorry. I couldn't find a guide on how to pronounce it properly. Anyways, it was very clear that she knew she had to push this thing really, really hard. That's why she did all these interviews. It was a big rollout. But then, like I said, nothing. Months now, nothing. Basically, the only thing I could find is this done for Open Art AI. And even if you think that should count, it certainly isn't in line with the Hollywood aspirations that were being pitched. So there's now a music video. Let's put that in air quotes too, along with actress. There is now a music video. That is the second video to appear on Tilly Norwood's official YouTube channel after the big debut one, which was a video called AI Commissioner. If that name doesn't make a lot of sense, like, aren't they pushing an AI actress? They are, but they tried to do it in the format of like a sketch joke thing. And AI Commissioner was like the punchline. I don't know why you try and give away your punchline in the title. It wasn't funny anyways. Regardless, this is only the second video on that channel. And wow, it reeks of desperation. I mean, the fact that she appeared in a second thing at all is kind of surprising, but it's way less surprising the instant you realize, oh, it's the people who are trying to sell her putting out another thing because they don't want people to forget that she exists as they still continue to try and push this nonsense. The music video is called Take the Lead, and it is, boy, it's something. It opens with this disclaimer, which says the following production was made by 18 real humans, from production designers to costume designers to prompters, editors, and an actor, with a cheeky little addition of no flamingos were harmed in the process, which is a statement that won't make sense until you actually see the thing, and it actually barely makes sense even after you did, but anyways. Now, this is an interesting contrast to the note that was at the front of AI Commissioner, because that one said, the video you are about to view is 100% AI generated. No humans or bears were harmed in the making of this production. Again, the bears thing was a stupid joke. I don't know why they think they're funny, but it's actually really interesting to contrast these two things, because the one on their first video was like 100% AI generated. because that was what the push was. Just AI did all this. Look at all the things AI can do. And now there were 18 humans involved in this, listing various jobs to make that actually believable. And not that I think the 18 humans involved was a lie. That's probably true. But it's interesting to see the shift because the culture has shifted. AI went from being a curiosity that most people were like, oh, okay, to being something that an increasingly high percentage of people loathe and view as a scourge. So this is actually a shifting tactic of AI companies overall, is to emphasize how much human input still goes into this. Because their original pitch was basically you don't need any people. Now it's, oh, look, there's still people involved because they have to counteract accusations of you're going to cost people jobs, which they have been, but also it's kind of muddied by the fact that there are lots of companies that are doing layoffs that they would have done anyway, but now they're blaming AI because people hate AI. Trying to actually pin a number of how many people have lost their jobs actually to AI is hard to do. Plenty of people are still being forced to use this stuff in corporate environments, especially tech-based environments. That much is a fact for certain. But anyways, it's just a shift in the overall conversation. Before it was AI did it. Now it's a bunch of people did it. And I'm sure it probably has nothing to do with the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal that would potentially grant AI-generated works copyright protections, meaning they don't get any. Now, I have my own personal pet theory that the next step for the industry as a whole is going to be to try and find out how much human involvement is needed before it is granted copyright protections, like how much tinkering after the fact or planning ahead of time by humans do they have to insert for AI-generated stuff to be considered copyright protected. That's what I think they're going to try and do next, but that could be a whole other thing, and it's a little too far in the weeds than I want to get. But anyways, we've spent a little bit of time on this. We haven't even gotten past the opening disclaimer of the music video. Oh, that's a good sign. And also, we are still not done with the opening disclaimer because given that this is a music video, do you notice who's missing? No mention of musicians, singers, a songwriter, a composer, literally any human involved in the music end of it. And given that with a music video, the music is a big part of it, that's an interesting omission. I can't prove this, but I am pretty confident, and I would bet you dollars to death knights, that the music and singing is entirely AI-generated as well. AI-generated music is actually arguably a bigger problem, at least for the consumer end of things, than AI images and video. Images and video, because it's something you are actively looking at, is a lot more likely to trigger your uncanny valley response, and they tend to have more tells. With music, unless you know a lot about music production, it's actually quite a bit harder to spot. Spotify is loaded up with AI stuff, and if you ever find yourself scrolling through something like TikTok, pretty much anytime you hear a song that sounds like it's oddly, weirdly specific and like really particular to this moment in time, yet it somehow sounds fully produced, yeah, it's almost definitely an AI-generated song. So they're not going to get away from that accusation, I don't think, because they didn't even bother trying to pretend that's not the case in here. But anyways, let's go.
When they talk about me, they don't see the human spark, the creativity.
Okay, so let's pause there. Right off the bat, big emphasis on the idea of human, her humanity, how much of a person she is, which of course she's not. She's not even a she. It's an it. It's a line of code configured to look like something. It's nothing. But it is putting so much emphasis on the humanity of both Tilly and the people behind it. I mean, the camera's right up in its face going, look how lifelike this is. Even though what it actually shows is a weird inconsistency on how in focus her face is. Like, part of her cheek is particularly textured, and then directly above it, in the same shot, it's weirdly blurred and out of focus. Part of this might have to do with the fact that AI Commissioner was uploaded as a 4K video. This one tops out at 1080p. Now, Did they make that switch because they don't want to pay the extra money to upscale it to a higher resolution because they already know this isn't going to work and this is a desperate Hail Mary that they don't want to sink too much money into? Or because the lower resolution will be more forgiving for all the flaws of AI? You make the call. I was kind of tempted to go shot for shot through this, but honestly, it's soul-sucking to examine this stuff in that level of detail. But anyway, we start seeing flamingos right off because somebody decided flamingos would be part of this thing's whole deal. Flamingos and like inflatable objects for some reason. You might notice there's a pretty big emphasis on how put down Tilly is, as if it's a real person, unfairly maligned. Hell, there's this line.
Actors, it's time to take the lead.
Actors, it's time to take the lead, as if it's a rallying cry to its fellow actors. What in the lion, the witch, and the f***ing audacity? Tilly Norwood is not an actress. It's not a person. It is not have community with other actors. Actors, it's time to take the lead. Shut up. Yeah, that bit kind of actively offended me. It's funny because Tilly is exactly what it is screaming that it's not in this video.
I'm not a puppet.
It is a puppet, and they are desperately trying to humanize it. I think they honestly thought it would happen automatically with the first video because she looked so real, but it didn't, and now the clanker doth protest too much, methinks. Oh no! Tilly feels attacked by the "Are you a robot?" tests on websites, but look, Tilly passed it! Why are you all oppressing Tilly? Anyways, it goes out, gives a concert, there's flamingos, everyone loves it. The whole thing is very Katy Perry or a certain era of Taylor Swift. Tilly eventually lands in front of this inflated house, near, but not in front of. Nice edit, guys. And in one last bid for sympathy, a hateful brick with clanker written on it is hurled at the house, but it bounces off. And then the house deflates anyway. I honestly don't know what they were going with that. Like, I get the brick, and I even get the bounce off, because it's like, you can't harm us, your stuff just bounces off us, but then I don't know what they're doing. But look, it's pretty pathetic, right? Hearing this fake person belt out in a fake voice about its fake feelings and pushing technology that is causing real harm. And again, if Tilly Norwood was actually going to be a thing that any major studio was actually interested, they wouldn't have to make promotional garbage like this. Actually, you know what it's giving? It's giving this.
Find me in the club, holla at your ape. You wander in the game, calling out my name. All up in the bay, lounging, chilling, drinking.
Sorry to subject you to that, but if you didn't know, crypto and NFT bros are partial to creating music videos talking about how awesome their fake money and scam investments are, and this is giving that exact energy, which, you know what, given the current state of NFTs, is actually a little bit heartening. Now, I am going to come back to this music video, but I found myself wondering, the company behind this, is this all they've got, or is there anything else they've got going on? Well, I did find an article last year where Eline Vandervelden, the CEO of Particle 6, was bragging about partnering with the History Channel to produce a series using AI. I thought, wow, that seems like big news. I'm surprised I missed that. Well, they didn't push this one nearly as hard as they did Tilly Norwood, but more to the point, if you scroll just below the headline, you see it's not the History Channel as you are probably thinking of it. It's History Benelux. It's a series called Straten van Toen. Again, apologies for my pronunciation, but that translates to Streets of the Past. Now, I don't know if these actually ever aired on television over in the Netherlands, but I found them on YouTube. They're between 4 and 5 minutes, and they mostly just feature the host, who is a real person, walking down the street, telling about a history, which then gets brief, dead-eyed AI representations of what it is he's describing. Now, it's not quite Darren Aronofsky's American history slop levels of bad, but it doesn't have to be, because AI isn't the whole thing. It's actually a vast minority of what we see, and they've done a lot to try and cover for it. You know, they'll put sort of filter effects over it so it looks more like dated footage, although they're kind of inconsistent about that, putting really vibrant colors up in the middle of an otherwise desaturated scene, but whatever. Regardless, this is nothing to brag about. It's always worth noting that the big push to get press on these things is when they are announced. But stuff like this, they don't want the press on it when it airs, and they definitely don't want to push it afterwards. The announcement is what matters when it comes to, honestly, almost anything tech related. We're going to do this thing and it's going to be huge. When it actually rolls out, there's going to be less press. Deliberately. That's on purpose. The hype is in the buildup because that is when you're raising money. And the time at which Eline Vandervelden was pushing this and doing these articles was not that long after Tilly Norwood. So she was trying to ride whatever wave she thought she'd created. I probably shouldn't take viewing numbers on YouTube as an indicator of much, but I still do want to point out that these numbers are pathetic for a brand the size of History, even a smaller branch of it. If I'm being completely honest, the views on the very first one of these aren't completely in the dumpster, but they fall off a cliff pretty much immediately after that. Once I found this, I looked up what else Vandervelden was listed as a producer on. Well, she's listed as an executive producer on something called Dragging Up History. It's a single short video featuring UK drag queen Elizabeth the Thirsty as she recreates a look from Elizabeth I in drag style. Now, I actually feel kind of bad for Elizabeth the Thirsty. I don't think she had any intention to get involved in AI-related stuff. She, from what I can tell, came up with the concept of delivering history stuff in drag for a video that she made for her university. And she then went on to win a contest that was held that would allow the winner, which she ended up winning, to host a short history piece. And this is what was done. I suspect it was largely influenced by her own work. So this kind of feels in a lot of ways like her baby. And she's not a huge name. She's very much an up-and-coming kind of drag performer in the UK. And yeah, she got saddled with this. Now, you've seen some clips that I put up about this. You might be wondering, okay, wait, where's AI factor into this? Well, it's these few seconds long moments of Elizabeth I moving and smiling slightly. It's completely unnecessary. It adds nothing. But Particle 6 is the production company, and they are an AI company, so it's in there. Actually, speaking of Particle 6, it is interesting that they only are listed as the production company for 4 things over on IMDb. Those being AI Commissioner, Streets of the Past, Dragging Up History, and 1 promotional music video for the Genshin Impact soundtrack. I'm not sure how much of this is AI generated. The description thanks Particle 6 for, quote, film production support, which could mean anything. If I were to guess, I'd say it's probably stuff like this shot, because this thing came out back in 2023, which was a point when close-up images of particularly people, particularly close-up images of hands, were notorious for being failure points for image and video generating AI. And there's a lot of emphasis on musicians and their hands. So I suspect all of that is real footage. But a shot like this, that's really hard to get in real life. Even with a drone to be able to take the shot, you have a very limited window to get a shot like that. And if you miss it, you're screwed. So I suspect it's shots like that where the AI was used. Oh, hey, I actually want to jump back to the music video real quick. I have a question for you. Does Tilly Norwood have freckles? That seems like it should be an easy question. It's a surprisingly difficult one to answer. Because we have shots like this with pretty natural looking freckles. We have shots like this, which appear to have basically no freckles at all. And then we have shots like this where she's got blackheads. Now I'm sure defenders of this kind of tech would go, oh, but like freckles get covered up in makeup. So like some of the shots she's meant to have lighter makeup and other ones she has more put on makeup. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Yeah, well, explain this then. Couple of different shots from what is clearly meant to be the same outfit, the same makeup, the same lighting, and the same setting. And one of them she has visible freckles. The other, she absolutely does not. And actually, it was kind of great to go through this thing frame by frame over the freckle thing, because that means I came across shots like this, or the gibberish that's on these magazines. And is that supposed to be her on the TVs? Because it doesn't look like her. And then, of course, there's these folks in the crowd shot. All right, that was fun. Let's get back to Vandervelden's companies. And yes, companies plural. Because despite the aforementioned 4 productions being the only things Particle 6 is listed for, they are not the only things that Vandervelden has produced on, because she is also the CEO of the similarly named Particle Productions. Now, Particle Productions is actually quite a bit older than Particle 6, because it was the production house under which Vandervelden made Miss Holland. This is what she was previously best known for. She created it, produced it, directed it, starred in it. It was a comedy mock reality show. Here's a clip.
In Holland, the men are like this.
Right.
You are probably like this.
So yeah, before all the Tilly Norwood stuff, this was her major claim to fame. Now, I don't like to do armchair psychology. I actually go out of my way to not do armchair diagnosis of people, but I'm going to step out of that slightly and say, here's the impression that I get looking at her body of work prior to this and now this stuff. Miss Holland was, I mean, for somebody trying to make it in this business, a decently sized thing. It had basically 2 runs, and I think she realized that was her peak. She was never going to do anything that ever got as big as that. And rather than slink off to be a behind-the-scenes person for various things and really never get the spotlight again, she instead hitched her wagon to AI, which allows her to be the face of the company and to speak to the press and to get all this attention again and possibly even just up her career in general, hitching onto what she probably thought at the time was going to be a massive thing, and she could get in on it early with a novel idea of an AI actress and really cash in. This also feels like a good time to circle back to that disclaimer at the front of the music video. You know how it said it involved one actor? Well, we do know who that was. It was Vandervelden. She herself was the reference for this performance. Now, how much of this is because she either couldn't find or didn't want to pay someone else to do it, or how much of it is she wanted to feel the spotlight vicariously? I don't know. But given her status as an actress who peaked over 5 years ago, it feels like it's worth mentioning. I think this move was to not only preserve, but to try and increase her limited presence and relevance in the industry. But as I said, Particle Productions is still a thing, and it's making content that, as far as I can tell, is AI free. So she actually still has a completely separate company. Well, they're probably under the same, limited liability or whatever, parent company, however she's organized it. But she has a completely separate entity under which she's still doing traditional production work, not AI stuff. Seems like she is hedging her bets a little bit because this new stuff coming out of just Particle Productions is pretty recent. And if the AI stuff had taken off, I have to wonder if we'd be seeing that at all. But she had a production company and it is still going. So what's it making? Well, she's the producer behind True Crime Secrets and Two Sides of History, both in the UK, and she is listed as the director for Two Sides of History. Two Sides of History is not called that because it's actually dealing with real historical subjects in a meaningful way. It's called that because it was released under the History brand. It's a basic 2 sides of the issue format where 2 people with opposing views disagree and no conclusion is reached. It's more polite than something like those Jubilee 1 versus 100 pieces of absolute trash, but it's not much more helpful than that as far as the discourse on any of these issues goes. As for True Crime Secrets, well, it's presented as if they just randomly stop people on the streets in various UK cities and ask them about any time they witnessed a crime. I have no doubt that the reality is all these people were pre-screened and their stories were already known and they're probably all scheduled to show up on the shooting day, but that's not the impression this thing wants to give. It actually has a pretty specific mission, and it's really clear. The point of something like this is to make it seem like crime is everywhere. And if you stopped any random person on the street, I bet you they've witnessed a crime, and it gives you the impression of crime everywhere and on the rise, regardless of what the real crime statistics in any given area might be. And you might be familiar with this as a particularly common and well-worn tactic of the right. It's a major right-wing talking point about how crime is out of control. And they always avoid the real statistics and talk about how much people feel like crime is out of control. And it's stuff like this that makes people feel that way. On purpose. For money. Now, I don't know if Vandervelden's company came up with this concept or if they were just commissioned for it, but at the very least, she clearly has no issue participating in something like this. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to circle back on one specific thing in the music video. One very specific shot. Because it jumped out at me at the time, and it's where we got to talk about some of the real unpleasantness that I haven't really touched on yet. We got to talk about this shot. This really jumped out at me because this one shot is in total contrast to basically everything else that's showing how amazing and beautiful and pristine all this is. So what the hell is this? Well, I am sorry to be the one to tell you this, but it's fetish bait. Things like Grok have gotten bad press from its users making use of it to sexualize real humans on Twitter, including minors, and a few years ago there was the whole thing with the AI-generated porn of Taylor Swift that managed to break containment. This kind of thing is a massive portion of the output of these things, and I call this fetish bait because it's exactly what a certain kind of user would want to know about her. Can I make her filthy? I am not going to show you any images of this, but AI image and video generation is heavily used to create pornographic and fetishistic images of stuff that either is very hard to create in real life, is impossible to create in real life, or is unethical to create in real life. We are talking on the lighter side of things: inflation, instant weight gain, shrinking or growing, vor, instant gender change, stuff that can only be created through artificial means. This kind of stuff might have been more commonly found in hand-drawn art prior to the rise of AI, but hand-drawn art takes a lot of time. And so for the people who just want as much of this kind of thing as they can get, they're turning to AI for it. And I'm sorry, but this image with the big splotch on her clothes, the massive emphasis on the bite being taken, it is so unnatural, and the points of emphasis really serve no identifiable purpose other than to evoke fetishistic imagery. Now, to be clear, so far as I know, the software behind Tilly Norwood is not being made accessible to the average users the way that Sora and Grok and this other stuff is. But Particle 6 want those kinds of people to fight on behalf of their product. So this is throwing them a very brief bone, hoping to get or keep them on side. It basically serves the same purpose as these two moments from the last Tilly Norwood video.
Only bit it struggled with was consent in romantic scenes. We just ignored that.
She'll do anything I say. I'm already in love.
Yeah, I did point that stuff out last time, but they're aware. They know what people want to use this for. Now, do they actually want to license Tilly Norwood for stuff like that? No, they don't. They're trying to pitch her as a premier item, something, for actual Hollywood, which they're not going to get. But they don't want to sully her image very specifically, but they do want the kind of people who use AI for that to come to their defense and help boost them. That's why this stuff is there. They know who they're playing to. And it's gross. And look, you can have fetishes. You can have an interest in anything that doesn't hurt other people. And as I talked about in the video that I did on 50 Shades of Grey, there's a very big difference between the desire that you have in your head and the practice that you engage in order to satisfy that desire. So as long as your practice isn't harming anyone, I'm not going to judge you for it, but directly appealing to this kind of person, this kind of user, I am going to judge the hell out of that. It really is worth noting that despite Particle 6 being involved in a couple of productions since Tilly Norwood debuted, their so-called star actress doesn't appear in any of them. This thing is a gimmick that they bet on and pushed that didn't pay off for all the reasons that I talked about last year, but it's also the biggest splash that this company has made, and I'm sure they're still trying to get her into something, and they don't want people to forget her. They don't want people to go, who? They need to have something else so there's a reminder of like, oh yeah, right, that's a thing. So we get this weirdly defensive, desperate bit of promotion that not only pushes Tilly, but AI in general, hoping to rally AI defenders to their cause.
Don't be left out, don't fall behind. It's the next evolution, can't you see? AI's not the enemy, it's the key.
But even the woman who started this knows it's trash because she's had to sneak it into things under her production deal with Hearst Media, which handles History UK and the various European arms of history. And we know that she had to sneak it in because half the stuff that she produced under that deal doesn't have any, which means that Hearst Media's deal wasn't for AI stuff in specific. It was just with her production companies, and she is using one of those to produce some amount of AI-related stuff to keep herself afloat and keep that technology going. Vandervelden likes to talk as if she was hired specifically for the AI stuff, but they clearly just wanted a production company that would make short content on a budget. And Particle Productions is that, only occasionally managing to push Particle 6 into the projects, which is allowed because these are low-cost pieces that probably have low oversight and nobody really cares. But Vandervelden knows this isn't working. She bet on a tech-driven future for the next phase of her career, and the only reason she hasn't fully abandoned it is probably sunk cost fallacy. She'll keep Particle 6 going for as long as she can find money to fund it, but the instant that dries up, she'll just focus on her traditional production house, which appears to already eat up most of her personal energy, since Two Sides of History is her only full producer credit since 2018, and everything else is an executive producer credit. Because she just happens to own the company that is producing the things. And also, as I mentioned, she's a director listed on Two Sides of History also. So her own personal time isn't going into the AI stuff. I think she knows this isn't going to work. She's not quite ready to abandon ship, but she is preparing a life raft. This whole thing might be funny if it wasn't based around tech that is driving up electricity costs, destroying the environment, hoarding massive pieces of tech that are important for so many people's lives and way more important things than generating nonsense like this. So I can't find as much humor as I'd like, but I do still chuckle looking at this and going, wow, you really are desperate, aren't you? And if you want to try and squeeze some extra laughs out of this, check out the comments on the YouTube upload of that music video because they are delightfully spiky. And also, I'm going to point out, somebody added this lovely bit of trivia to Eline's IMDb page. Not sure how long it'll be there, but neither she nor her agents or whoever is managing her IMDb, because, yeah, people manage these things themselves or they have people who do it for them. They haven't noticed yet, but it'll probably get taken down eventually. So I just had to talk about it. What are your thoughts on this? Did you even remember that Tilly Norwood was a thing? Were you expecting anything of her? Were you expecting this? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help. Don't worry too much about it, though. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are real, and you're not AI generated. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and to thank some folks from the lower tiers: Cyborg Ex Machina, Alex, and Lightning Spirit. You know, I've been saying Angry Casperol for ages, and I almost said Angie Casperol. You are distracting, the whole lot of you.